Hello everyone, welcome to Physical Science. We're going to be doing Unit 1, Section 3, Density. So we're going to talk all about density today. So let's figure out what density actually is. Over on the right hand side we can see that there are different images and going from a low density to a high density. You should notice that all of these images take up the same amount of space. However, there are less things here than here. So if you were to pick up this object, which is the same size as this object, this one would feel light, like a marshmallow, and this one would feel heavy, like a lead fishing weight. So both of these take up the same amount of size. This is what density is. Density is the amount of matter or mass in a unit of volume. So when we talked about matter or mass, we learned that mass is measured in grams, and volume is going to be measured in liters or some other unit like milliliters. So all of those things are going to be contributing to what density is. When we think about it, if we're going to pare it down to just a few words, density is the mass per unit volume. And we can express density in a formula. So density is mass, how much mass there is in a particular volume. So D equals M over V. Now in physical science we're going to be working with a lot of equations that are three variables, 1, 2, 3. There's an easy way to solve for these variables using a method called the triangle method. I'm going to show you how to use that today. If you take a triangle and you separate it out into three categories like this, and no, it has nothing to do with the Illuminati, you can plug these variables into the triangle. If you notice, the mass is on the top of a fraction, mass per unit volume. Anything on the top of a fraction you will always put in the top of the pyramid. So I'm going to put mass up top. Directly below mass is the volume, so I'm going to put volume on the bottom. Whatever is left over, we're going to put in the leftover hole. So density equals mass over volume. Now what this is actually showing you is whether or not you need to divide or multiply using the variables. So if you have one over the other, that means you're going to divide numbers. If you have two side by side, that means you're going to multiply. So this line here really means division, and this line here really means multiplication. So depending on what you're solving for, you are going to either multiply or divide. So let's say that I'm solving for density. I would plug in my volume and my mass, so I would say mass divided by volume. But instead of solving for density, let's say that I was solving for mass. Well, I would cover up mass, I would plug in my density and my volume, and that means I would have to multiply. I'll show you some examples of this in just a second. But for right now, make sure that you know how to plug in a formula into the triangle. So anything on the top of the fraction will go on the top of the triangle, and anything that is on the bottom of the fraction will go on the bottom of the triangle. And if you have things multiplied, you will put them side by side. So one over the other means division, just like a fraction, and side by side means multiplication, just like in math class. So when we're trying to work with density, we need to come up with a way to figure out density. So here are some examples. If the mass is 15 grams, when you're working out word problems, the first thing you want to do is write down units and numbers as you go. So I'm going to write down mass equals 15 grams before I even continue. And then I keep going. And the volume is 6 milliliters. I stop and I write V equals 6 ml. And then the last thing it says is, what is the density? D equals question mark. Notice I did not try to read that whole problem through all at once. I stopped. So I'm going to take my triangle that we saw on the last slide, and we're going to say that density equals mass over volume, M over V. And I am going to use this to plug in and solve for what I need. So I'll redraw my triangle, and I'm going to plug in my first number first. So this is mass, so I'm going to write 15 grams. volume is 6 milliliters, so I'm going to find my V. I'm going to plug in 6 ml. And then I'm solving for density, so I don't know what that is yet. So now I see that to find the density, I have to take 15 and divide it by 6, because that's what that division line means. 15 is over 6. So when I do that math, I end up with D equals 2.5, but then I have to worry about units, because remember, everything needs units. Well, if I look here, it is grams over milliliters. So I write grams over milliliters. So my density is 2.5 grams per milliliter. Let's try another example. What if we're not solving for density? So this one says if the volume of an object is 15 centimeters cubed, remember I stop and I write down V equals 15 centimeters cubed. And remember, centimeters cubed is just another unit of volume, just like milliliters. And the density is 5.5 grams per centimeters cubed. So I write 5.5 grams per centimeters cubed. And yes, the units matter. And then it says we're going to get it matter. Then we're going to figure out what the mass is. It says what is the mass. So I'm going to redraw my triangle because I always want to be able to reference back. So density equals mass over volume. And I'm going to plug in my numbers for what I know, and I'll solve for my unknown. So I see over here that volume is 15 centimeters cubed. So I'll write 15 centimeters cubed. Oh, wrong spot. So learning experience, sometimes you just accidentally put things in the wrong spot and you need to make sure you double check. Even teachers. So let's try that again. Volume is 15 centimeters cubed. Volume is on the bottom, so 15 centimeters cubed. And my density is 5.5 grams per centimeters cubed. So I'm going to write 5.5 grams per centimeter cubed. And I'm looking for my mass, which is up at the top. So the fact that these numbers are side by side means I need to multiply them. So I'm going to take 5.5 and multiply it by 15. So I end up with my mass equaling 82.5 when you plug it into the calculator. And then do you see how there are centimeters here and centimeters here? Well, those will end up canceling out, leaving you with nothing but grams. But honestly, if you just remember that mass is the measurement of grams, and you can look up and see that our mass is in grams and what the problem is given, you don't even need to worry about the elimination. Just remember that mass is in grams or some form of grams. So your final answer will be mass equals 82.5 grams. Thank you, and I'll see you next time. Yay!